numerous times now. Really, the only update is that since we met last, we signed it. So Scott, myself, President Burks, and Tracy Claybaugh. So you have a copy of that executed in front of you. Any other commentary on that, Scott?
The only thing was in that update is the university adding in credits, university credits, for our town employees that have an interest in attending Plymouth State University. There are some guidelines with regards to that, but it has been sent out to all department heads to pass on to their staff, and hopefully we will see some engagement from our town employees in utilizing the credits that have been provided by the university. And after tonight, I wanted to wait till after tonight, but we will schedule the first quarterly meeting coming up. The question is, will that be a public meeting or will that be a conversation non-public?
I don't know what we would use as our reason for that to be non-public.
Is that university relations?
Right, university relations.
Yeah, if we're gonna have the whole, say if we're gonna have the whole board there, it should be a public
Yep.
meeting. Otherwise, we'd have to get Radigan involved or something to make it non-public, but
Nope, I will get that scheduled within the next couple months.
sounds great.
It's greatly appreciated that they've offered us these credits for our employees.
Yes. It is, it's a valuable addition to the agreement. Any other questions about the LSSI?
No.
Just a super quick note, as I was wading through traffic in downtown this morning, or this afternoon, I noticed the little grass common that they often have I think there's like a Ukraine sign or something on it right now. The one that's on Main Street. If you're coming from South Main Street headed north, it's the one right before you turn into the parking lot here.
Yep, okay.
It looks like we haven't mowed that in, all summer, probably due to the construction.
Triangle?
But it's like,
A little triangle.
That's where the watering trough used to be.
well, it's like waist high at this point, the grass, which normally I would drive right by, but I was second in line in the traffic stop.
Get to observe things.
I get to observe some things, exactly. I wouldn't
I
have
will check
noticed
on that.
otherwise.
Yep.
You had time.
Exactly, I had time. That's it that I have for comments. Scott, you've got
I've got time.
11 minutes for
Okay.
your manager's
Are you
report.
ready?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. The town manager's report, my report for this week. First and foremost, Plymouth Fire Rescue. Chief Morrison was pleased to announce that the Plymouth Fire Rescue has been awarded over $29,000 for the purchase and installation of turnout gear washer and dryer cabinet. The funds are made available through the United States Department of Homeland Security through the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, the AFG. Chief Morrison states, in keeping with our mission to promote awareness and prevent cancer, this grant will enable us to implement and streamline process for cleaning and drying out gear. This will ensure that our firefighters are better protected from carcinogens and other contaminants. We are thankful for the efforts of Captain Steve Vashon, who was the primary author of this grant application. We also appreciated the assistance of consultant Greg Davis from First Responder Grants, who we contract on a yearly basis to assist us with this process. So congratulations, Chief and Deputy, on securing that. Much appreciated.
Scott, or Chief, is that a replacement of an existing washer dryer cabinet we had or a new one? Yeah.
So the other thing that will happen, of course, is it kicks that CIP purchase
And that was going to be my follow-up question. That was in the CIP for,
20-ish years.
that's awesome.
That's the guesstimate on the lifespan.
Yeah, great.
National Night Out. I want to thank Plymouth Police, Fire, and Recreation Departments for participation in the National Night Out held in Thornton. It was great to see so many departments come together and support this very important event. In my opinion, this is a great way to build a safer community. It allows the communities to come together in an effort to meet their neighbors and their emergency responders, as well as breaking down barriers between community and citizens. Not to mention the time for the emergency responders to have time to talk and gather together. Departments that participated in the night out in Thornton were Waterville Valley, Campton, Thornton, Plymouth, Ashland, and Holderness. which all have mutual aid agreements between each other. So it was nice to see those departments come together, and our recreation department to be there and assist with the night out.
I heard a rumor that the chief was going to be in the dunk tank or something. Did that
He chose
happen?
not to, I guess.
That's disappointing.
And also the police department won the tug of war.
Oh, all right. Nice.
FEMA, December 22 storm update. Finally, FEMA was here to meet with Joe and Steve. They met on Monday, July 31st. They conducted site visits to damaged areas from December 22 storm. We have a follow-up meeting with them on Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock, I believe, to find out the outcome of their site visit. Tenny Mountain Highway update. Speed limit reduction from 40 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour will take place the last week of August. We will post it in the weekly newsletter as well as on the town's website. The 2024 budget timeline has been posted to the town website under the Select Board tab and was included in the newsletter for August 3rd in hopes that citizens will take a look at this and participate in the public hearings that have been listed on the timeline in the schedule. Welfare report, Mary Ann met and worked with 18 individuals and/or agencies during the month of July. I applaud her for her efforts in facilitating these cases and providing guidance and resources that are available. Plymouth State University update. I met with Jess Dutal on July 25th. We discussed a number of items. First, Pirate Party was of discussion, and thoughts on creating a community business event in the future for this, as well as the Plymouth State University Town Hall. Ted and I have been communicating back and forth with Jess Dutal on securing a date for this, sometime the week of August 25th. PSU move-in and the partner brunch is on August 16th. The move-in, we were able to work with Greene's Construction, and they will allow use of the electronic sign on Holderness Road to direct the new freshmen coming in through the registration process and move in on August 25th. The town's management discussion and analysis, the MDA. We are currently working on the update for the MDA for the 22-23 for the auditors. The purpose of the MDA is as management of the town of Plymouth, we offer readers, the town of Plymouth, this narrative overview and analysis of the financial activities of the town of Plymouth for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Once we have that draft finalized, I will make sure we bring it to the board for review prior to sending it along. Another piece that Ann and I are working on is a fund balance policy. In developing a fund balance policy for review, the purpose of the policy is to establish a key element of the financial stability of the town by setting guidelines for fund balance. And I think we all realize that the unassigned fund balance is an important measure of economic stability for the future of Plymouth, and making sure that we're following DRA, Department of Revenue Administration recommendations, and keeping that fund balance steadily moving in the right direction. Property assessing update, the reevaluation. The expected timeline is as follows. Letters will be sent to taxpayers on or about August 21st. The letter will include an update of their property values for the 2023 tax year. Informal hearing with taxpayers will take place and discuss their assessed value and held during the first week of September. Appointments can be scheduled through the town office. Information will be available on the town's website under the Assessors tab. Tax-exempt nonprofit inspections. This is something that hadn't been completed for 10 years. And in keeping with our due diligence, inspections have been completed of all tax-exempt nonprofit organizations, and we should have the report the last week of September. The process, like I said, hasn't been completed in 10 years, and we will now have an up-to-date listing of tax-exempt nonprofit property status. And through this, and talking with Emily from Whitney Consultants, We will see some that will come onto the tax roll, and we'll see some that will be removed. But at least we will have an up-to-date list of their status and their credentialing to keep that status moving forward. Downtown drainage project update, and I'll make this really quick, is basically working on the same things that we've worked on over the past 2 weeks. Some of the big things that are happening right now is that we are waiting for the temporary water line to be put down on Russell Street. Once the temporary water line has been put down by Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, we will be able to start excavating for the drainage portion of Russell Street. Hopefully that will start the first of next week. The detention pond, that continues to be worked on. They're at a point where they've stopped until the drainage portions are completed on Russell and Main Street. Otherwise, we're working on the change orders that we talked about previously and waiting to hear back from the EDA with regards to the removing of the lighting, street lighting in the project. And speaking with the EDA, they just wanted us all to know, and I think it's an important thing that we discuss, is that infrastructure projects like this are very complicated and very expensive. Accepting federal funds, as we have from the EDA, requires the town of Plymouth to follow a set of standards, procedures, and laws that are much different than what we currently have in town practices. This adds to the cost, but it also ensures that we have a good product in the end. So we're still hopeful they'll remove the lighting out of the project, and we'll be able to continue forward with some of the change orders that will increase the cost of the project as we discussed previously. And that's my report.
I just wanted to also give a quick shout out. There was an editorial in the Record Enterprise from Alex Ray.
There was.
Which, in a project of this scale, to get a positive written shout out from the community in the paper, talking both about Granice and the work that you've done, it's a pretty huge compliment for.
I mean, I can't say enough
happening there.
about Granice Construction, their accountability, their adaptability, and they're willing to conquer and overcome the projects and the issues that they're finding. And I will say, I speak with Tom Granice, who's the superintendent of the project, very early every morning, and his brother Steve follows up at the end of the day, making sure that our expectations were met, with everything being cleaned up, taken care of as they've promoted. So they have been great to work with, and it was nice to see Alex's compliments with regards to the project as it moves forward.
Yeah, we could have been sitting in a much worse state at this point, but it's looking good. All right, well, it's 5:15. I'm going to open a public hearing. We are holding a public hearing in accordance with RSA 31:95B for the acceptance of unanticipated funds from the State of New Hampshire ARP Act non-development grant. These funds are for the Plymouth Municipal Airport for costs related to operation, personnel, cleaning, sanitization, and janitorial services to combat the spread of pathogens and for debt service payments. Ann or Scott, do one of you want to intro this?
So this is the third or fourth year that the town of Plymouth Airport has actually received funding under this grant. The funds can be used, as you indicated, for just about anything, and they basically cover the budget plus several years of the airport on an annual basis. So we have several reasons that we can use these funds, and we do every year.
That's great. And the total here is
$22,000.
$22,000. And the deadline to expend it is, I remember reading it here.
Sorry, it's going to be in the first letter.
It's okay. I'll put you-
January 25th, 2026.
Thank you.
2026. Yeah, so we have a few years to spend it, and it's a good chunk of money towards the budget. That's great. Any public comment on this hearing? Anything from Zoom? All right. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at 5:17 PM and bring it back to the board. We need a vote, and the
Make a motion that we accept.
Wait a minute,
Yeah.
sorry.
page
I didn't mean,
3.
to- page 3 of your package, they have a vote specifically
Oh.
to what it has to say. So if you wouldn't mind reading that, that would be great.
Sure. So, the vote reads as such. The Plymouth Selectboard vote pursuant to RSA 31:95-B, which allows for the acceptance and expenditure of unanticipated funds, the approval of the grant for the municipal airport in the amount of $22,000 from the state of New Hampshire through the ARP Act non-development grant offer. These funds are for the Plymouth Municipal Airport for costs related to operations, personnel, cleaning, sanitation, and janitorial services to combat the spread of pathogens and for debt service payments. We, the Plymouth Select Board, further authorize Chairman Zachary Terrell to approve a certificate of vote authorizing the town's manager and Scott Whedon as duly authorized to execute and deliver any contracts related to this grant on behalf of the town of Plymouth.
I'll second that motion, if that was a motion.
That was a motion.
That was it. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you to Ann for pursuing this and working with DOT to make sure that we are always in the forefront of obtaining this grant and securing these grants for the airport. Thank you, Ann.
Zach, I'll catch up with you later for signatures.
Yep. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That is handled. Next up is Alex Hutchins, Tom Morrison, and H.L. Turner about police and fire building assessment. I think we've got a PowerPoint that we're going to walk through.
Hello, how are you? Sorry, technical difficulties with the computer.
He's setting up. Can I-
Say, while they're setting up, Tom or Kevin, do one of you want to just introduce what we have H.L. Turner here to discuss and context of what we're about to see?
So this is Bill and Barry from the Turner Group, who was retained to do an assessment of the fire and police buildings in terms of mechanical and structural and fire protection and electrical and plumbing. I don't know if I missed anything, Bill.
All of the above, yes.
To give us an idea of whether or not these buildings are rentable.
I'll just add, I think, so everybody's on the same page with this, is that there was a committee formed with regards to the building committee and the assessment of the firehouse and the police station. Mark Halloran's here tonight, member of the committee. Frank Miller, member of the committee, is here tonight, as well as Chairman Terrell, Chief Morrison, Deputy Chief Pierce, Chief Hutchins, and myself, and there's others that are members of the committee. Committee's met a few times, have viewed both facilities, and based on that, felt it was best to have an assessment done, as Chief Morrison just mentioned. So that brings us to tonight. Once we get through the presentation tonight, you'll see there's some actionable steps as we move forward, and the committee will reconvene and work on those. But Bill, I would ask you to proceed.
Yes.
And as we go through, I don't know if you want questions to be held to the end or what.
Whatever is most convenient. If you have something you see and you want to ask a question about it, please feel free to do so at that time, or, certainly we'll be willing to stay as long as you need us to answer whatever questions that might arise. So yeah, whatever people are comfortable with. So thank you for having us up. Just again, real quick, Bill Hickey with the H.L. Turner Group.
I'm Barry Hogue from the Turner Group.
So we came up with a team of folks and did a facility assessment, physical assessment of the buildings. And then we spent some time with the chiefs and the personnel in the buildings to learn more about the buildings and their operations. Thank you to both fire and police. They were very helpful and were wonderful to have us in their building. So we put together just a short PowerPoint presentation that kind of highlights some of the issues with the buildings, just to kind of give that picture's worth 1,000 words. And so we're just going to run through this. Again, if you have questions, please ask. And if you just soon wait till the end, that's fine too. This is just a real quick, 10,000 foot view summary of the report itself. So, excuse me if this is it's a little off, but that's okay. We'll work with it. So Plymouth Fire Station, we'll start with the fire station. The two lots that are highlighted in red are the two lots that are currently owned by the town for use by the fire department. And you can see, their total of just shy of an acre. Not exactly a nice square rectangular lot, but so it's, talking with the chief, physical location, great location. The size of the buildings, the size of the lots, we're going to show you why that's an issue. What we thought we would do to kind of show that pictorially is this is these same two lots in red behind. The brown rectangle is about a 20,000 square foot footprint of a building. And we have some historical data both for Plymouth and for some other projects we worked on. The size of the building could take almost any shape or form, but we just thought this was a good indicator. So to the right, closer to Langdon Street, we placed the apparatus bay, and the gray hatched area is just, what would be required for pavement. So you can see that a modern, current, safety building just physically won't even fit on the two lots, never mind, the parking and site amenities that would be required for a building like that. Just a couple photos of, everybody knows the building, the outside of the building, and, so basically, there's the apparatus bays. So you've got an older 55-ish year old metal building, and, the biggest problem, the building has a number of issues, the roofing, cracks in the masonry, condition of the metal siding. But really the biggest issue we found, the physical size of the building, both from a standpoint of it's lacking another apparatus bay for all the equipment that the fire department needs to operate, but also just physical size. I mean, fire equipment is getting bigger. So physically, height of the building, having custom-made vehicles that will fit in the building, and then length and depth of the building for all the equipment that's stored inside the fire station, it just no longer fits. And let's see, where's the rest of my slideshow? Uh-oh.
Down on
Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm not an Apple guy. My wife always gives me a hard time because I don't know how to use an Apple. Well, I had it. Where'd you go? There we go. Okay. So, just a couple photos from inside the building. You can see, literally every, inch of floor space and more is used, racks on the walls. But, when the equipment's in the building and everything, just physically moving around the equipment is very, very difficult to do. If there's anything, add as you need to, Barry.
Okay, all right.
The other thing with the building, proper fire alarm, horns and strobes, just current code requirements for a building, especially of this type. There are none. More photos from inside the building, turnout gear rooms. There are specific requirements and recommendations today for turnout gear rooms, separated, proper mechanical system because of all the contaminants that can be on the turnout gear. We included a picture of the fitness room, in air quotes. You can see behind the machines, I believe, is the boiler room door. So again, just making do with the space that they have, but just again, physically not enough space. for the fire department. These are pictures taken inside the house, and that's really what it is. It's a residential house, so, sleeping quarters. So there are sleeping quarters in the building, but the problem with that, again, life safety issues, egress, no proper egress.
Right, fire separation. When you have people sleeping, you either need a sprinkler system or you need to have fire separation from the remaining elements of the building for safety purposes.
And again, a lack of alarm system, hardwired alarm system, proper horns and strobes and things like that. They're just not present in the building. The picture to the left is the building inspector's office. So it's the kind of in the connector that's the apparatus bay and the house, or the sleeping quarters and the day room. And that's where the building inspector works out of. So again, just making do with what they have, but just really not proper space. Just a photo of a restroom, again, a residential restroom, and then a picture in the basement. The way the building was constructed, the overhead door, the site slopes to the overhead door, so the water in the basement quite a bit, which, obviously isn't ideal. Any questions on the fire department? I know that was quick. However, again, we could read you, 50 pages of a report, but you'd all be asleep in 10. So
High-level summary, though,
Absolutely.
is that the scale of the building is a problem.
yes, so the building itself, it's funny. So when we do an assessment to the building, we can recommend, yes, fix the roof, fix the siding, fix the crack masonry. When you're all said and done, you're still going to have a building that's physically just too small.
Yeah. So if we just went ahead and did renovations on the
Yep.
building, got, the roof all updated, fixed
Right.
the siding, painted, all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
We still have a space.
You still have a building that's just
That
plain
hasn't
old too
gone
small.
away.
Correct.
And then the secondary issue that it seems like you've raised is some safety issues.
The safety issues overall, but especially in the sleeping quarters in the house, if you will, just lack of proper egress, lack of fire alarm, lack of, just, again, you've got people sleeping and you want them to be safe.
I didn't see any pictures of the kitchen, but I assume that's also a residential kitchen, not a commercial kitchen.
It is.
Not the sort of thing you would expect out of a place where people are
Yes,
working.
yeah, it's a house. So basically, all the components are of the house.
Yeah. Which I'm sure when we made that decision,
Yeah.
I don't know how long we've had the house, 10 years, 15 years?
Maybe 10.
Not even 10? I mean, it was a great decision to extend the life of that fire station
Right.
at the time.
Yep. But,
But we don't have that decision.
right,
It's-
and
It bought us 10 years, but it didn't
If-
buy us 30.
yeah, and if somebody came into town and said, hey, we want to, put up a building, we're going to have people sleeping there, and yeah, we don't think we need to follow the code, odds are they probably wouldn't be allowed to do that. So I think it's just, a cautionary tale.
So it's really a story of scale and safety.
Yeah, and again, at one point, I'm sure the building was a proper size, it worked well for you. We've heard all the iterations of what's been in the building in different locations and things, but again, things change, things grow, and it really is inadequate.
There's also a number of operational deficiencies, like a contamination area, a proper contamination area. When they come back from fighting a fire, they shouldn't have to go through the whole facility to, take off their gear, throw it into an extraction machine. And right now, the extraction machine is in the same area where they store their clothes, their equipment. They should really be separated so that, you're not, extending the contamination to the other areas of the building or of the space. And the contamination area should be right off of the apparatus space, so when they come back from fighting a fire, they go right into the contamination area, take off their gear and get rid of it, dispose of it, whatever you need to do to it, and then go through the rest of the building.
I think one other part is that year after year after year, we've thrown good money at the building. And we have sunk a lot of money into that building, whereas it's time to kind of take that Band-Aid off and provide to the departments of what a modern, adequate, functioning fire, rescue, and police department would be, because we just have continued to throw good money after bad money onto that building.
And another consideration is a building of this type, if you were to have, any type of a natural disaster or other disaster, this is a building that's gonna wanna remain operable. You know, when it was designed, it wasn't designed for any, you know, of the requirements that a modern, you know, safety building would have. There's all sorts of increased design requirements on a structural perspective for a safety building to ensure as best you can that it'll remain operational in the event of whatever happens. That's not the case here.
Can I just add a couple of points before we move
Sure,
to the PD?
please.
One, that building inspector's office has traffic through there all day long. I don't know how Tom, you know, makes phone calls or concentrates. That's wholly inadequate. That we need to correct one way or another soon. Two, when Barry spoke about the decon issue, we had a good example of that a week ago Friday. We had a hazardous materials incident. And we had the decon 6 or 8 people. We had one shower, and as Barry said, no separation. And those guys are out of service. Guys and girls are out of service until we get them decontaminated as well as the apparatus. Scott, to your point, myself and the last 3 fire chiefs that I've worked with, every day is a balancing act of how much money are we going to put into this facility, knowing, as we do, and did know that it needs to, it's not sufficient. You don't want to put large sums of money into that.
Yeah, and even just addressing the male and female, you know, you've got changing areas, sleeping areas, all of the above, you know, none of this would meet any sort of standard for that issue.
Good for them to move on to police.
Put my glasses back on so I can see. So police station, you know, you look at overall from the tax map, you know, it's just over a 4-acre lot, and you think, okay, you know, the police station is tight to Main Street, but geez, they have a nice big lot. You know, is it possible to do more with that lot? And what we did is we superimposed some topography, and I think you can see why the police station is located where it is. It's over 100 feet of elevation change on that 4-acre lot. So, you know, we always talk about usable space, and they're using it. Everything else, pretty much, we're gonna guess it's a rock pile behind it, but everything else really behind the police station, the rest of the lot would really be considered, you know, not usable. So we went, you know, again, we visited the police station. You know, they did a really nice envelope upgrade a few years ago. You know, new sheathing, new siding, insulation, you know, everything was done really well. So the condition of the building, you know, on the exterior, you look at it and you say it's pretty good. We have the yellow addition that was put on a few years ago. I think, you know, most of the issues occur when you get inside the building, and just really the space inside the building is so tight. You know, there's a picture here, there's the Sallyport door, which is, you know, from what the chief was telling us and what we measured is really too small to operate properly. You know, you've got your impound yard beside the building, which again is too small. There's a picture here of one of the offices that was a closet. So they've gone through and they've taken as much usable space as they can. They've removed storage areas, they've removed closets, they've removed, you know, pretty much everything they can just to make workable spaces for folks. Just a couple more interior photos. You know, the photo to the left, you know, metal buildings are great. You know, they're fire stations, police stations, typical, but they're very prone to ice dams and roof leaks. And, you know, this is a picture over one of the back doors, and those stained ceiling tiles are great indicators that, you know, you'll have an ice dam at the roof edge. It'll get back up underneath the roofing and start to leak into the building. And I think that's been a constant issue for the police department. Want to talk about the other photo, Barry? You've got.
Yeah, that's in the Sallyport. The one to the left, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the Sallyport. And you can see the damage, the water has damaged the base of the drywall and just exposed the insulation. And so I think it comes in through the overhead door, and it may even come in underneath through the slab.
Yeah, and I
Slab
think,
foundation.
you know, part of the problem is you have this building at the base of a hill. You've got the roof that drains, you know, at least part of it to the back, and you've got a lot of water. We saw a lot of indication of water that would pond in the back, and standing water, whether it's up against a building or up on a roof, are probably the worst things you can have for a building. So I think if you look aesthetically at the police station, it's a nice-looking building. Again, they did a nice job, but it's really the physical size of the building, again, that's really limiting for, proper operation and proper workspace for the police department.
It's a decent building. I think the issues that we found are almost superficial, they're cosmetic. It was more operational,
Size
for the
limitations. Yep.
size of the facility, operations of the facility. There's not enough room to operate it properly. I guess they have a machine that does the breathalyzer,
Right?
and it'll get interfered with radio transmission, in which case then they have to recalibrate it, which is a real problem. So they have to keep it in a jail cell to keep it, protected from any radio interference. So
Right, and they have the holding cells, but there are certain requirements for sight and sound distances and all that, and the holding cells don't meet any of those requirements. So there's, again, when it was built, I'm sure, to accommodate the police department's needs at the time, but given current regulations, the sight and sound distance separation isn't a suggestion, it's a requirement. So, there's just, again, you could reconfigure the interior spaces, but, again, that size, that footprint of the building is just too small.
My understanding is we have some equipment as well in the room with the garage door.
Yes.
That is being affected by some of the dust as
Yes.
well.
Yep.
well, there's a closet off of the sally port where all your communications equipment is, which is very sensitive to heat and dust because it generates its own heat, but it's sensitive to dust and humidity and all that. They do have a mini split in the room to counteract the negative atmosphere, but it's not in the best location, but they have no other place to put it.
Right.
It's not in the best location because of the sally port.
So any questions on the police department, police station?
Do you have one more slide?
We do. I didn't want to, this is the next step slide.
I thought you skipped one.
I did. Good eyes. So again, just other issues, that front, the picture to the left is the front entry.
That's the exit for the offices,
Okay.
as opposed to the front public
Yep.
entry. And it's highly worn.
Yeah, this.
A lot of traffic.
The middle photo is where a CMU wall comes to the exterior back wall. We found some similar issues at the fire station where walls are just separating. There's movement, those metal buildings move like crazy, a CMU wall doesn't, and you start to get some movement. And then the picture to the right is just one of the holding cells in the facility.
So just similar summary to this building is the building itself is fine, but we're kind of at the breaking point in terms of space,
Right.
similar to the fire station, and there are a few compliance issues that, because of the space, we don't
Right.
really know how we would address.
And again, it's a nice big lot, but you've pretty much used all the space. I know they would like some additional parking and things like that, you're just fighting all these too many variables for the usable space you have on the property.
And again, with that building, Bill, it also appears that there are several life safety code violations, deficiencies, as well as a lot of issues of maintenance that need to be upgraded.
Addressed, yeah, absolutely. So I apologize, that was the last police station slide. Anybody have any comments, questions about police?
No.
And so the last slide, we were asked to kind of outline what do we think the next step should be? So really to meet with the police chief and the fire chief and, the building inspector, if he's going to be housed, anybody that's going to be housed in the building, and really do a space needs to determine, what size building would be required. 1 story, 2 stories, there's pluses and minuses to both.
I would think that needs assessment would look at not just what we need with our capacity right now, but project out over what does fire and police service look like over the next 20, 30 years?
Right,
'Cause
and-
you wouldn't talk about a public safety building in now's time. You would think about it much longer
Or in the
scale.
future, and, even looking into the future, we always want to leave room for expansion. You know, things change over time, and, you know, with some mindful planning, you know, we can site the building on a lot that will allow for future expansion should it be required.
Bill, you did a space needs study last time we went through this.
We did.
That was many moons ago.
That was just a few years ago, yes.
Shouldn't we be starting from,
We would, that's a good base, but I think we could take that and certainly want to refresh it and update it, because
Yeah.
I'm sure things have changed.
exactly?
And
as
I think that
Chairman
was,
said, where we want to look, you know,
yeah,
down the road.
and that was for a specific site, if I remember right, the final floor plan.
That's right.
It was kind of a lazy L floor plan.
Yeah.
So again, you know, depending on, and the building can take many different shapes and sizes, you know, depending on needs, like we said, multiple levels, things like that to get it to fit. But, you know, we certainly want to revisit that. You know, and then start to look for sites. You know, obviously, you know, they'd love to stay where they are, but just can't because it's just physically too small. So start to look at sites. You know, what makes sense. You know, we were, you know, I know there's a desire for a main building and possibly, you know, a satellite or a secondary station, and, you know, just starting to look at all that. And then, you know, let's, you know, get together and review the sites and rank the sites, because you really want to do some due diligence on a site before you agree to buy it, such as a phase one environmental. Just make sure, you know, there isn't anything hidden that you don't want to know about, or you want to know about. You know, a geotechnical evaluation, it would be, you know, unwise to buy a site and not do these assessments, because, you know, okay, you buy the site, ready to build, then we do the assessments and we find out, you know, there's hazardous material on the site, the soils are poor, whatever the issue might be, there's lots of wetlands, you know, and then the site actually isn't usable for the town. So, you know, we were kind of kicking around. An ideal site would probably be about 4 acres of usable or buildable land. The site can obviously be bigger, but you really want about that 4-acre parcel. So, you know, it wouldn't make any sense, you know, to pick 3 or 4 sites and then do that assessment on all of them. Just, it's gonna cost quite a bit of money. So, you know, try to be diligent with the funds that are being spent.
Would we be evaluating spaces and looking to try to stay in the sort of generally around the village commercial area, or would we be looking at or open to other locations?
I think for us, I mean, the village commercial. I would say up to Route 3, say to Fairgrounds Road.
Mm.
There's some consideration there than there was last time. The PD might have a different, you know, they're on the road. They're on the road much of the time.
Yeah, our current location is great just because you have great access to Main Street, Plymouth Highways, the interstate. You know, we don't want to go out west to like maybe Turnpike or anything. That wouldn't work for us. But you know, somewhere in the general area where we are now.
And as we know, that's limited. The availability of land in that area is limited.
Yes, quite.
But again, I think, you know, if there was a potential parcel, we could look and see, can we make it work?
Yeah. So that would be the next steps here.
That's really the next steps. I mean, really, I think, you know, like we said, the first one is really to work with police, fire, building inspector, whoever's gonna be housed there, and make sure, you know, proper spaces are allocated for everybody, like you said, not just now, but into the future. And then, you know, once we have that, you know, we'll have a total square footage, then we can start to, okay, we really like this site, we can do a quick test fit, can we make the building work? If we can, you know, and this is a highly desirable site, let's do some investigation to make sure it's a buildable site.
And Bill, when you are planning out a facility like this, and I know you've done a lot of engineering on police and fire complexes, are you planning 30 years, 50 years? What is the?
We, right in there, but, you know, so 30 years for the building, the spaces in the building, 50 years for the building itself. You know, the last thing you want to do is put a, you know, inexpensive roof and in 10 years have to go back and ask for money for roofing. So we try to use, you know, there's that material, you know, some durable materials are very expensive. Other materials are very inexpensive but won't last long. So there's that kind of sweet spot between cost and durability. But we really look at that hard. And, you know, I think it's really It wants to be between a 30 and a 50-year building that's really gonna need little to no maintenance.
And with regards to 4 acres, is that allowing room for expansion?
Yes. So that would allow for a drive-through apparatus bay, that would allow for plenty of site parking, that would allow for, you know, we have, so that, you know, we were saying, you know, spaces you desire in a new building, you know, a training room, but also space outside to do some training, should you want to, you know, and things like that. Voting, you know, properly designed, you could host voting, you could host all sorts of community events in this building, you know, and things like that, so, you know, that
Yeah,
would.
so I think it is important for us to consider if you were gonna build a large municipal building, you know, if you can make it multi-use, a few things
Yeah.
happen. One, we get more availability for grants because you've got a broader appeal, different
Right.
things you can apply for. And then also we just solve more problems with one building.
Right.
We know that the elementary school would really like us not to do voting in there.
Right.
But there is no other alternative location in town at the moment, so we're kind of making do with that relationship as it is. But I certainly think, you know, we could consider, like, you know, maybe you build a new police station, a new fire station, but the savings on furnaces, cleaning, janitorial,
Right.
you know, all these sorts of things, having a single structure, a single spot, I think that does make a lot of sense.
Well,
I mean,
there's-
we've kind of jumped to that conclusion,
Right.
but just making sure that everybody's kind of following along with that.
Yeah, and there are a lot of common spaces that can be shared, like we had talked with both departments, you know, a training room can be scheduled, you know, it's a big space. You know, they could host out-of-town, companies to come here and train, you know, so, you know, with just a little bit of scheduling, with a little bit of, you know, everybody gets along in the building, which is important, you know, you could really,
You build one commercial kitchen, you
Right.
build, you know, all these sorts of things.
Yep, absolutely.
And you could
This-
design the building so that you could use the training room for voting as well, or for community events, and design the building so that you're never sacrificing the security of the police or the fire, because it's designed so that the public can come in and out of that space
Yeah.
without going into the rest of the building.
Thank you. Other questions? Comments?
Not yet? Yeah, gotta find out where we're gonna put it.
That's the trick, right?
That's the trick.
I would think our next step is for us to reconvene the committee and start talking about the space needs, to determine the building size, as well as starting to look at different facilities that might meet the expectation of what we have.
Absolutely. You know, and this is a great time to go tour other facilities. You know, it's really easy now to see things you like, but probably more importantly, you don't like. And if it's a change on a piece of paper, it's not a big deal, but once it's constructed and you don't like it, that's a tough thing to overcome. So, yeah, it's a great opportunity to, you know, look around and see what's out there.
Bill, can you send a list of complexes that you're familiar with? and
Happy to.
Have worked on?
Happy to, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'm thinking of a few. We
Yep.
looked at Molten Borough had
Yep.
just opened
Right.
last time we went through this.
Right.
And we went and looked at that Molten Borough Public Safety Building.
Yeah, if you guys, we'd love to have you come down to Bow. Bow has one that's 4 or 5 years old. It's about, well, I looked today, it's about 23,000 square feet, so it's a little bit bigger than what, but it's a combination police fire, and that might be a good one. And yeah, we'll definitely, you know, we can put together a list of comparable stations. And we've done a couple, you know, it could be fire only or police only, just to see how they do things. And we could set up some of those as well.
So isn't Molten Borough both police, fire, and community with like a pool?
Yeah,
A pu-
and the comm center. They have a communication center. I don't know if it's regional or not, or they just do.
Molnboro is not community.
Oh, it's not?
Town hall is there.
It's just police and fire only.
Oh, is the
They
town
do
hall there,
have
though?
They have a separate public building that they use for community,
Okay.
but they're actually just lost a major vote to build a community center with.
All right. I think I was hearing about that one, yeah.
That's what it was a big vote that they just lost.
It'd be interesting to see, I'm sorry, how far ahead they looked, because they just hired 6 full-time personnel, and hopefully they can house them, et cetera. in the
Wow.
building that they designed years ago.
Yeah, we had taken a tour of that building, and I know one of their big issues was if they were to break up a party on the lake, and then what do? They were using the Sally Port to just kind of put everybody in temporarily, which isn't ideal either, so, you know.
Well, we certainly have that problem here. We do
Really?
not have, we don't have the capacity to.
Correct. And there's going to be a balance, right? Because to build for what would be your worst case
Right.
probably wouldn't be feasible, so.
No, the worst case would be pirate party. We're going to arrest roughly 5,000 people. We're not going to build a facility to house that.
Question.
Yeah, please, Neil.
Can you give us an estimate on what the engineering design costs would be for a facility that would meet our needs?
We could give you a range. I mean, it really is going to depend on the size and complexity of the building, but we could certainly give you a range, you know.
Ballpark?
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to. And we could even, we could get you for these next steps, we could get you costs for that. But we'll give you the cost for a full design.
Do we have a sense of how expensive those other ones in other communities that we might be touring were?
Well, yeah, as you know, costs have increased dramatically over the last few years. The Bow Building was about I think it was between 5 and 6 million. It was a wood frame building, and the cost of things, I don't want to say they've escalated substantially. So even something a couple years ago is going to be much more expensive to build now. But yeah, we could even put together a list of some of the costs of some projects, if that would be helpful.
I think it would be helpful to give people a sense of what we're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
So that was 2 years ago, Bill?
With the Bow?
The Bow?
5.
Oh, 5.
Yeah. We just finished a police station in Belmont, which was brand new. We could get you some pricing information on that. That would at least give you a general idea, what the costs are.
And what are your feelings on building a wood frame structure rather than something that might be concrete in terms of durability and, let's just face it, fire?
Well, again, if it's properly designed to meet the code, so it'll be fire rated if it needs to, it'll be sprinkled, it'll be all that stuff. But look at how old is this wood building, and it's lasted, right? So there's nothing wrong with you could do a wood roof structure. The walls in the apparatus bay are probably going to want to be more durable, than a wood structure. But there certainly is a place for wood in a building like this, and it would make sense as long as it's warm. It doesn't even have to be warm; it just has to be kept dry. Wood will last, as we know here in New England, wood will last a very long time. And it's very economical. Your labor pool for wood construction is far and away bigger than any of the other materials. So wood has a lot of benefits. We do a lot of wood buildings just because it makes sense. So.
Okay.
Any additional questions for H.L. Turner? We're good.
Good.
Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you. Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
all the
Thank you.
work and the presentation.
Thank you to the IT guy for
Yes.
the laptop. Much
Always a
appreciated.
shout out to Dan.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that brings us to Jeff Hiltz with an update on the Frontenac development and road acceptance of Chatterin Lane, Ski Lift Lane, and Point of View Drive.
Yeah, I get that. Yep.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good evening. Just a couple of updates for you folks. Just in the event that you're not aware, on July 20th, the planning board approved the field changes that occurred on the project, and I don't know if you were copied on that or not.
Yes, so what we have in front of us with regards to the decision from the planning board is they made 2 changes. With regards to the compilation plan, it's not the final as-built plan, but the plan that was put in front of the planning board that night. And those 2 changes were to accept a hammerhead at the end of Point of View Drive versus a cul-de-sac.
Correct.
And the second change was to except the relocation of the fire cistern at the intersection of Ski Lift Lane and Chatterin Lane.
And there was one more, Scott.
That's all I have in the report that I received.
Okay, because on the plan, we also showed them where we had eliminated the first cul-de-sac and made it a curve.
Down on Chatterin?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yep.
And that's not on that report?
I don't have that as part of my report,
Okay, I'll
but
put...
I understand that.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I understood that to be also part of this approval. The other thing, too, the punch list items are just about complete. There's one more outstanding issue which should be resolved shortly. And Kevin French is the surveyor that's doing the as-bills, and they're probably 60 or 70% complete. And I hope at the next meeting I'll be able to submit to you a completed set of as-bills. And based on that, I have one request, and I'll make my part of the meeting very short, is if the board is in agreement, what I'd like to be able to do at this point is to give you some money in escrow so that we can start the title search, because as I understand it from our last meeting, that's a 4 to 6 week process.
It is. So what my recommendation would be, and I think there's still a few pieces that have to be completed before I would make the recommendation to accept the roads based on the due diligence of the town, is we first need the final as-built plan
Yep.
stamped by an engineer.
Well, I'm not, excuse me, Scott, I'm not asking for acceptance of the road right now. I just want
No, I want to make sure we're clear about what we communicate back to you.
Okay, sure, I'm
on
sorry.
what the
And I didn't mean to
expectation
interrupt.
is.
Yep.
And I think that, the first piece is the final as-built plan stamped by an engineer,
Surveyor.
engineer, because that's what Plymouth Village Water and Sewer is gonna require in the final as-built. In talking with Jason Randall today, he
But-
said that
but your requirements and theirs are two different,
it should be one as-built, because that one as-bilt's gonna be registered at the Grafton County Registry of Deeds. So that one as-built is going to represent what Frontenac ski area, Frontenac development has for Chatterin, Ski Lift, and Point of View Drive. Because as the town, we want to know what the sewer lines underneath those roads and how they've been engineered by Wright Pierce in their redevelopment or re-looking at that. Because if they don't meet the specifications for Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, and you want to move that so Plymouth Village Water and Sewer accepts those sewer lines, we want some assurance that if the road is going to be dug up, it's going to be put back in the form that it is today after you've made the improvements to it. So a final as-built plan, we would want the final plan reviewed by KV Partners, our engineer.
oh, that I understand, yeah.
Mike Vignali, and to make sure that punch list has been checked off and done, which I know you've done a lot on that.
It would require a final walkthrough and
Yep.
review, yeah.
And then just the plan to be registered at the Grafton County Registry of Deeds. And then, as you mentioned, we would want our attorneys through DTC attorneys to do the title search on the property and report back to us that there is a clean title that's on the property, on the roads.
Yeah.
That would be our expectation in moving forward to the road acceptance policy as designated by the Board of Selectmen and was approved years ago, to make sure we are doing our due diligence and accepting this road and taking it on to maintain going forward. Which I think are things that we've all talked about in the past.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with any of that,
Yeah.
And you're requesting that, what are you asking for today? You're asking for us to...
What I'm asking right now is if we can start the process of the title search, and what that will require on my part is somebody from the town, I suspect it will be Scott, to contact your attorney to find out what that would cost so I can escrow that money.
And I think we do have an estimate. I asked Joseph Perez to reach out and try to get an estimate on that, so I think we may have something, Jeff.
Okay.
I don't want to definitely say we do, and if we don't, we definitely will get that to find out what that title search will cost for those roadways. Yep.
And then I know before that can proceed, I need to escrow that money, but I need to know what the amount is first, obviously. So what my question is could we start that part of the process?
Is there any reason not to?
No.
Okay. I see agreement amongst the board, so yes.
Okay,
Let's get that process started.
I'll work on that tomorrow.
okay, all right, good. next time I'm back, I hope to have the balance of this information.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
I notice we have some people who live in that general area. Is there any commentary from folks who live in that area? Does anybody desire to make a comment on this agenda item from the public?
If you're gonna give me the mic, I'm gonna use it.
I will give it to you with some amount of limit of time. We don't necessarily have all night, but it's always best to talk these things through while they're
3.5 minutes.
warm. That sounds lovely.
Sounds fine.
I'll give you exactly that.
My name is Dan Marion. I live at 19 Point of View Drive. My wife would have been here, but it wasn't a public hearing, so she decided to play pickleball instead. So I wanted to give you a little history on this subdivision. There's 46 lots, and I got that from the tax map. I might be off by one. Within Mount Frontenac, 29 of the 46 have buildings on them. 2 of the 29 are under construction. A few lots are owned by the same person or persons to give them some space. One lot broke ground for construction over the last few weeks, so there's some activity there. The first home for Chatterin Lane was built in 1987. So we're going back that far in terms of this project is concerned. The lot and the homeowners are in favor of dedicating the roads within the subdivision to the town. So there's unanimity on that. We recognize the due diligence of the planning board, who made sure that their requirements were met before approving the final plans, and we appreciate their efforts in this regard. On the subject of appreciation, we'd like to extend our gratitude to Mr. Hiltz and his partners for getting us to where they are today with road dedication. The sewer dedication is going to be a bit of a challenge, as you'll see. Most lot and homeowners understood the roads were private when they purchased, and that included us a couple of years ago. And we were patiently waiting for town dedication to the town, waiting for dedication to the town. However, nobody in the entire development knew that the water and sewer system was private and a separate dedication was required. That was just an observation that I found out going to one of your other planning board meetings. And then when I found that out, it was a shock to my wife and me. So what we decided to do is poll the community. So I got a letter together, polled the community, and nobody knew in the community that the sewer lines were private. They all thought they were public. And the reason why they thought they were public is because we each paid an initial hookup fee, something like $1,700, and we were paying quarterly those same rates that you pay for usage. So that's what had us thinking that they were public. Another indication was our realtor said that the sewer lines were public in the real estate listing. For me, the person that sold me the lot had an option to select private for the sewer system, but they selected public on the disclosure statement. Now, I'm not saying that they did that on purpose, because they probably were under the same assumption, but there's this big cloud over the development in terms of the private versus public of the water mains and the sewer lines, and that is a very big concern to us. A few homeowners, including myself, gathered and compiled a history of this development through the Open Public Records Act, and we created a chronological timeline of all the events from 2002 to current date, and there's a couple of people here that were involved in that. Through our reading, we discovered what appears to be some missteps along the way, which can turn into valuable lessons learned. For example, in the 2002 Plymouth subdivision regulations stipulate development is to be completed within 3 years from recording the final plat. While there may be legitimate reasons for some delays, a roughly 20-year project plus is not what anyone had expected, and I'm sure that's not what you expected either. We're not here to dwell on the past, but rather express our wishes for roads dedication. As we know, a water and sewer dedication may be a much bigger challenge. I do have one question, though. I understand that both the town and the water and sewer district punch lists, and some of the items on those lists converge. But across organizations where others are unique to each organization in terms of the punch list. My question is this: is there a path where the town can approve the road dedication before the water and sewer district renders their decision?
I believe the answer to that is yes.
I believe it is yes, but I would much rather check with our attorney prior to doing that, because there could be some substantial cost associated to the town in the event that lines had to be dug up and put back in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That being said, usually private lines that run under the road, if anything has to change on them, it is the homeowners who have to pay. Like, just personal example where my sewer line from my house to the road passes under the road and is connected on the opposite side of the road as me. So when I had to have that repaired, they had to do a cut in the road, and I had to pay for all of the road construction associated with doing any modification to my line. So
My concerns aren't the connections from the house to the main line, because those were all done in accordance with the current.
but you're talking about the private main line.
I'm talking about the main line that comes up through Chattering Lane.
Which is owned privately. That main line is not currently. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, all of
Yeah, no,
that.
absolutely.
So it may not actually be in the owner's interest to have the road accepted first, in case some of those cuts have to happen, because it may be less expensive to open up the road now before the town owns it, and suddenly you have town regulations about distance of cuts and all those sorts of things. So I hear what you're requesting, and in my very limited experience with one single personal project where we had to cut open the road, you know, the requirements on a town road, in that case actually a state road, so it was even worse, was like 20 feet worth of pavement had to be cut in order to replace a line that's 4 inches. Where when that's a private road, you can dig up that road 10 inches wide and put the pipe in and replace 10 inches of road. You know, so the requirements to do those repairs on a private road to meet some specifications for water and sewer, as a community up there, you may find those to be far less expensive on private roads than they would be on public roads.
And just to be clear, the private road piece of it is not our road, it's Mr. Hiltz's road.
Correct.
He's the owner of the roads, and he's the owner of the sewer infrastructure currently,
Yes.
until dedication, of which the town would take over the roads and sewer district would take over the underlying infrastructure, if all goes well.
I mean,
Doesn't change the collective cost, and I don't know how Mr. Hiltz would deal with that necessarily, but
One of my other concerns, and Dan, we've had this conversation, is that we take the road, but the sewer line is still private, and something happens.
Yeah.
Who's gonna cover those costs?
And that's the reason for my question, just to bring it up and to shed a little light on the subject, because
yeah.
it's gonna be a discussion item between now and dedication. And I just wanted to see if we can put it to bed, not tonight, but air it tonight, so there's discussion on it.
Neil?
The normal practice is for the homeowner or the contractor for the homeowner posts a bond with the town. To, you know, for any impact on the town road.
I would be very surprised to hear that a 30-year-old development has any sort of remaining bond open or funds available.
There's no bonds or funds available
No, there
from
aren't.
this development. I have a spreadsheet that is a mile long that chronologically shows when the bonds were collected from the developer and when they were dispersed. And I'll be happy to share it with you if you want. It was the culmination of all the work done by some residents here, others that are on Zoom, as well as others that just couldn't make it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of the procedures that the planning board has put in place over the past 5-ish years have been very much to prevent situations like this, right? Is to not have these sort of projects linger, which sometimes is frustrating to developers when we come back and say, hey, you got to start over on your plans, or you got to start over on your process because we're 3 years into a conversation and You haven't met the letter. And so we can frustrate developers now with some of our planning board procedures, but they are in place to try to prevent these sorts of situations.
So I'm over my 3 minutes and 50 seconds, so thank you very much, I appreciate it.
3 minutes
Thank you,
was the
Dan.
reference point, but thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Any other comments from Frontenac locals?
Not from that local, but regarding the installation of the sewer lines, wouldn't that have been according to? So the developer just put in lines for
There was
that?
no approval given to them by Plymouth Village Water and Sewer based on engineering studies.
Wow, okay.
And maybe there wasn't requirement at the time, who knows?
Have they
Seems
run cameras down the lines? Do they know what they are?
I will tell you that Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, excuse me, are currently having their engineers review what is up there and see if it is substantial, and can handle those developments up there. I just talked to Jason Randall this morning, who's the superintendent of Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, and as of this morning at 8 o'clock, there has been no determination made by Plymouth Village Water and Sewer if those lines are properly installed.
Yes, please. That mic's great.
This one?
Anyone?
Yeah, the podium one is good. Just make sure you introduce yourself so we get it for the minutes.
Yep. Sharon DeMarco, One Point of View. I have a question. If history's going to repeat itself, which it always does, how can we hold, I can see this whole thing playing out as a nightmare with the water and sewer, just like the road dedication, just trying to get Mr. Hiltz to do anything for the past 30 years. So my question to the board is, will Plymouth dedicate the road? Will he get the road dedicated from the town of Plymouth and then deal with the water and sewer? To me, it would make sense for the water and sewer to be dealt with, then he gets his dedication. Because what happens if all of a sudden the town of Plymouth takes over that road and all of a sudden we have sewer pipes underneath that road and none of us know what's underneath that road because Mr. Hiltz went ahead and paved everything quick, nilly-willy, and there's no plans, there's no bonds. What happens if the sewer starts backing up or the sewer lines start popping everywhere? The taxpayers of Plymouth going to pay for that? The homeowners are going to pay for that? Whom? He should pay for it. He did not follow the rules and regulations for the water and sewer. He does not have the as-built, not us. We're being held hostage by him. The town is being held hostage by him. I think one of the conditions from this board should be water and sewer, that entire private issue, whether it's private or public, the town should not absorb that nightmare, and neither should the homeowners. Just for what it's worth. So I'm looking to this board for some, because in my personal experience with Mr. Hiltz, he has asked me to perform. I have performed according to what he wanted. He continues to sue me. It continues to cost me thousands of dollars in excavation, thousands of dollars in lawsuits. And he's still asking for more. So all I'm telling you is town of Plymouth needs to be aware, and the people who own lots up there need to be aware. So can that be something that this board can stipulate? That's what I'm asking.
You know, as I stated earlier, and it's truly a concern of mine in doing our due diligence, is that there's one as-built stamp plan by an engineer that includes Plymouth Village Water and Sewer plans as well.
And
Because that's one plan that's registered at the Grafton County Registry of Deeds. And if Plymouth Village Water and Sewer accepts those sewer lines that go up through there, they become part of their program.
And what if they don't?
And not the expense of the homeowners and/or Mr. Hiltz in the Frontenac development.
Okay, and what happens if they don't?
If Plymouth Village Water and Sewer doesn't
Does
accept
not.
that, The board obviously has the ultimate decision, but I would never make a recommendation to accept those roads, not knowing what's underneath them and if they meet the standard of what Plymouth Village Water and Sewer has in their regulations for installation of main sewer lines running into a subdivision.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you. Now, does the board feel the same way?
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
absolutely.
thank you for the reassurance.
Ann, did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to reiterate what Scott had already advised Mr. Hiltz when he was
Yes.
sitting here. that-
Yeah, single set of plans. that
Single set of
are
plans,
Signed off
yep.
on by both,
Right.
yes. I mean, we technically could move past without that, but it doesn't seem responsible to do so. Right. All right, well, that concludes Frontenac Development. We're going to skip the next item. Grant application for ECBG competition program. Plymouth's support letter. I will read you a support letter that was ghost written in my name. Dear grant reviewers, the Plymouth Selectboard and the Town of Plymouth support the submittal of the grant application for the EECBG competitive program and agrees to partner with the Plymouth Area Renewable Energy Initiative and the other sub-recipients named on this grant application for this project. In collaboration with the town manager, the Plymouth Energy Commission will take the lead on this initiative for the town of Plymouth. We estimate that will be a total of 150 in-kind hours donated by PEC members, including A, coordination with Perea, the other sub-recipients, and Select Board, attending meetings, reviewing prospective solar contractor proposals, site visits with solar contractors, and other tasks such as submitting invoices and completing necessary paperwork documentation. The town of Plymouth is currently working to install a ground-mounted solar PV system that will generate approximately 324,800 kilowatt hours per annum, which will offset up to 74% of our municipality's total electric usage. Participation in this grant opportunity would help the municipality work towards a net zero energy footprint through the installation of an additional 100 kilowatt hour ground-mounted PV system. The $230,000 will be used for development of this additional PV project. In addition, proposed grant funds would be used for Habitat for Humanity, Townline Cooperative Housing, and Tri-County Community Action Program projects. Habitat's headquarters are based in Plymouth, and the town is delighted to see them included in this partnership. We look forward to partnering with the New Hampshire Department of Energy, the towns of Ashland, Center Harbor, Holderness, and Sandwich, and Perea on this very important regional partnership. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, me. Grace, do you want to give some additional context to this?
So Grace Garvey, and I take full responsibility for ghostwriting this for you. So we came in front of the board, I want to say 6 weeks ago, to ask for your support in the concept paper, and you guys were thumbs up. And so this is the next step to actually going for the grant in collaboration with those other partnerships. And that's the skinny of it. There's a deadline for the grant, and we would have to have this letter pretty much turned around almost promptly if you are in support of us coordinating with Perea to go for this grant for the community. For this community and other communities outlined. Literally, they would need a signed copy of it by the 16th.
If we go forward with this, where would this be?
We would go through the same vetting process.
So we would look for another site. There's no additional space at our current site to add this there. We would look for
possibly
other
up in the back.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Is there any downside to this?
I mean, back when we've had two presentations now on the energy efficiency and conservation block grant, and both times we were in full support of moving this forward. So I think this is just the next step.
Next step.
And putting it forward.
So it's a win-win. I like that.
I like it.
Okay, I'll
Want to make a motion for me to sign this letter?
I'll make a motion that Zach be authorized to sign that letter on behalf of Plymouth in support of this grant application for the EECBG competition program.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can you have him sign yours as well, and we can give Grace that?
Sign what?
Your
So
copy?
the one he's got in his
Grace,
car.
if you've ever been out
Oh,
to
never
Star
mind, I'll just
Island to
take
see their solar array,
Star Island? In,
Isles of Shoals,
Do you need anything else?
no, I think we're good.
You're good?
I have not.
if you ever get the chance to go out there and take a look at their solar array and how they generate power for that entire
Star Island. I have
hotel
heard
is
of it.
pretty amazing.
Do they also power their sewer, water and sewer?
They do.
Yeah. Speaking of water and sewer, ooh,
They do.
everybody's gone now.
Frontenac's a heated topic, so be careful, Grace. Since we're on the topic of solar, where are we at on that project? The one that is being built?
I could update you if you want
I would love-
Because you would,
Oh,
for it.
I mean, I guess we can wait and let Bill update us, but
No, wait,
you're here.
yeah, I want you to go
That's
for it.
right.
So, little frustration on our part, and Ann sort of experienced a little of that today. We're getting a little bit of a runaround with the co-op on the interconnect study. It's almost like people are like, give it to him or give it to her. And then we get this stalling. We're not quite sure what's going on. Ted Van Zandt sort of sent a pretty directive email this afternoon and said, look, you've told us to do this, and then you told us to that. We just want to pay the fees to get the interconnect study moved to the next phase. So we're just waiting to hear. And it's really Barrington Power who needs to continue to move that forward, keep us in the loop, pay the fees, and the co-op to accept them. They're supposed to identify an account number. They have, for some reason, not done that yet, even though we've submitted the application, which seems a little bit delayed.
As far as the project's concerned though, so what effect does that have to do with the project as far as?
So we can't even begin to order parts until we know that we can construct at that site.
Yep.
And a little bit of the, the little bit of thing that keeps me up at night is if we get too late in the year, we can't go to construction, and then we're gonna have to go back to the FAA to jump through that hoop, and then we're gonna have to go back to the the PUC actually did approve the $10,000 rebate already, but if we get into 2024 and we're not commissioned yet, we may have to reapply. It probably wouldn't impact the 30 and potentially 40% from the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act.
It
So
just
not
gets
quite,
chaotic. Delaying this
Yeah.
project gets a little chaotic.
yeah,
Hopefully, we can clear that soon.
yes. Any questions?
Grace, I would recommend that if we don't hear from them by tomorrow afternoon, 24 hours after Ted sent that email this afternoon, you let me know.
Okay.
Because Alyssa, the CEO of the co-op, is on our building committee, and I am happy to reach out to her to see if she can have some action to make sure this moves along in a timely manner.
Thank you. And it is their construction department that is sort of, something's going on there.
I think she would like to know
If she can light a
if
fire
there's
under
any
someone, that'd be
roadblocks
great.
and what's happening.
I will keep you in the loop tomorrow,
Okay.
for sure. Any other questions about that one?
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
Neil McIver, soil testing on Main Street.
I received reports of soil tests which were done by
SW Cole.
S.W. Cole, and the samples were obtained by Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, and those tests reflected soil moisture content of material, and it was also analyzed particle size gradation of materials that were being put into the project. But they did not have any testing whatsoever for contaminated materials. And this really concerns me. I want to make it clear that I don't have any criticism or issues with the contractors. I'm really concerned that the project engineers have not made any efforts to determine the contamination levels of soils and how the soils that are being removed are managed and distributed. I was involved in 1995 with Scott Construction, working for Plymouth State University, and in 96 with AMSCO Construction, working on the university campus, and we rebuilt Highland Street, and we had to completely remove all the concrete. The road was all concrete slabs, and these concrete slabs were installed almost 90 years ago by the Works Progress Administration. So nothing had really, there had been very little work done. We had to, in order to replace all the infrastructure that we put in for drainage and water and sewer. And in '97, I was involved with A.E. Mitchell when we did from approximately Russell Street intersection down to the river. We went under the railroad track, and from where Fat Fish is now and the Fox Block, we went up Main Street and as far as the trolley car, and then we went up Court Street, up around by Rounds Hall, and we went around the Common and did all the infrastructure. But we had to remove the concrete there too. And and then subsequent to that, I believe, I'm not sure if it was Piper, but I was not involved in the work that was done for the roundabout and the new bridge and North Main Street. But I'm aware that there were contaminated soils along North Main Street. There were a total of 22 gas stations on Main Street, and most of these gas stations were in operation from the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, and there isn't much known about how the drainage. Most of these gas stations had automotive repair facilities. There were a number of automotive dealerships with automotive repair facilities. There was a tannery at the D&M building, and which had been in operation for many years. And there were two dry cleaning establishments on Main Street. The area that concerns me the most is from where South Main Street starts at the corner of Highland Street, because I don't think there's any knowledge at all about how the drains were, how the I guess you'd call it effluent was dispersed, or if there were, if they were just dry wells or seepage pits, or we had an incident with property that belonged on North Main Street next to the student housing next to the Meredith Village Savings Bank, where we never really knew what happened there, but it was definitely contaminated, and that was some type of disposal area from the past, and Plymouth Village Water and Sewer said it was not connected to their system. So I believe that it's very likely that there are similar type structures which have been leaking toxic materials into the soil on South Main Street, where the original concrete from the 1930s is still in place, and it hasn't been penetrated until now. And I feel that the engineers have they have an obligation, project engineers have an obligation to do a duty inspection according to engineering standards of the soils that they're taking out, and have them tested in labs so that we know what is contaminated and what isn't. I personally know that there was a massive spill down where the skate park is. It was thousands of gallons, and I don't believe it was ever cleaned up. It just went into the ground. And I'm as a certified wetland scientist, I have to go through the same process for my ethical obligations as these civil engineers, professional engineers have to go through the New Hampshire Office of Professional Licensure. And I know what the standards are. So I'm not picking on any one person. I'm just very concerned about these issues. And I'm not gonna make a motion. I'm just gonna leave it up to the board to see if, maybe our engineer could have some input.
Scott, I thought you mentioned that the developer was actually testing materials.
Well, they gave us all the results they had, and they were only testing for moisture and for gradation, and not for any contamination.
Which my understanding in talking with DES today, that's not a requirement of a municipal project.
Well, I've been waiting to hear that. I know that...
I'm still waiting to call back. I've talked to DES Wetlands, I've talked to Water Supply, and one call back from another gentleman, I can't remember which section of DES he's with, but it wasn't a requirement of this contract as DES approved it.
Something's missing here, because I observed, I believe it was DES or the EPA, drilling and doing monitoring testing in areas where there was a dry cleaner and where there was an automotive dealership. And I know for a fact that there was a serious problem up just beyond Plymouth Furniture, where there used to be a Getty station, and the materials had to be transported to a facility that does remedial action, and the treatment, and the state must have records of all the testing they've done. I know that they ran into problems when they did the roundabout, and that had to be cleaned up. But I don't have the specific test results, and I don't know where to go to get them. But I know that there was a significant amount of testing by either the DES or the EPA, or maybe they do it together.
Neil, do you have a sense of how much this testing actually costs?
I don't know. The DES always tells me that cost is not the factor.
Well, it sounds like you want to add it to the scope of the project.
No, I'm not trying to slow the project down. I feel that they need to handle this material responsibly.
And is there anything that tells them they have
And
to
we
do
know
this?
that they were dumping it in wetlands.
I'm not saying, but I mean, is there anything that tells them that they have to do a particular type of testing?
So Scott said earlier in a conversation that if they observe something that would lead them to believe there might be contamination, like you see those like rainbow blooms or something
Yep.
in water, then at that point they're obligated to test for toxicity.
Who are they? Who's qualified?
The on-site engineers for
But if there's no
repairs.
Okay.
observance of that, then they're not required, which is, to me, is a little crazy. We start talking about, like, dry cleaner chemicals may or may not produce a visible anything, but again, the requirement's the requirement. I don't know. I mean, to some extent, I think that your question might be the most relevant one, is if we as a board were to decide, yes, this is a concern of ours that goes beyond the legal requirement of what they have to do, and we feel a moral obligation to have this material tested because Neil has a knowledge of this area that exceeds others' awareness, what would be the cost? Are we talking about adding,
A couple $100 here or there, or
even if we were talking
50,000.
about $5,000, I think we would go find $5,000 in the budget so that we could all sleep at night knowing we weren't dumping heavy metals in a swamp.
Yeah.
But if it's $100,000,
that argument gets harder to make.
the argument gets harder to make, and I sleep a little bit easier for $100,000.
I mean, the only thing I can tell you is I walk around the project each and every day, is that Wright Pierce has an engineer at the trench when they're digging, and they've actually brought 2 extra engineers in because they're digging in 2 spots now. And that engineer is responsible to be at that excavation site for the entire period of when they're excavating material.
And I'm having to assume that these engineers are trained to observe rainbows and other soil conditions that
smells.
might indicate.
Discoloration.
And if they do identify that, that's when they call in SW Cole, who is a company who does the testing of the materials, to come in and take a sample and test it. I can only tell you what I'm told, is that they have not identified any of those sources at this time.
And so where does that material get distributed? I know they were using the McDonald's for.
No,
That's the equipment.
well, that's just a holding place.
This material too. What's
They
that?
stockpile it, and some of it's going back in, and then they're getting new material from up at Mike LaTulip's pit out in Rumney on Route 25.
So what doesn't go back into the
They
ground?
take out to Mike LaTulip's pit at this point.
Okay, so it's going to Rumney.
At this time,
Yeah, well,
And then it could get relocated from there.
yeah.
we don't know.
Well, my concern is that, that we pursue a reasonable and prudent approach to managing what could be, could very well be contaminated soils.
And who's going to be in charge of that?
Our engineer,
That's extra fees that we'll be paying our engineer to do that for the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer Department project, because we have not dug anything on the main street.
well, it seems to me that the water and sewer, if they're the ones who are making the observations on Main Street, they have an interest in this project, so you don't have somebody who is unbiased doing the observations. I think that we have to find the right people at DES and try to get the results of their testing. They
I've made the
have to be
calls.
recorded.
I've made the calls. I'm waiting for calls back. That's the best I can do. I have too many other things in a day that I have to accomplish on this construction project than to call DES every hour, every 2 hours, and try to get a call back. They're busy.
Yeah,
They call back when they can.
well, I've done my best.
So Neil, we're both in like Perlac, and we also work with DES, and we have contacts that we can touch base with, and they could follow up as well. And it's also within a quarter mile of the river. So
So
it falls
Scott
within
wouldn't
our
have to bear that burden.
Correct.
Okay.
we'll put that on the agenda.
Is that okay with the board?
I think deferring this to PERLAC to explore
Other venues of getting the.
whether or not this is a concern, whether or not we can get additional, I think handing this to PERLAC makes
Well,
sense to
that,
me.
you know, I accept that.
Because it all flows downhill anyway, and where does it all go ultimately?
I mean, I can tell you the two contacts that I spoke to today said they have no authority over this, and they'll try to get me in touch with someone who does.
Oh, thanks so much, Scott.
So I've made another call to a gentleman named David in the Water Bureau, in Soil Testing Bureau.
Yeah.
But both parties I spoke to today were just, we really don't have that authority over a municipal project.
But if PERLAC learned that, I mean, we as the board have authority over the project, if PERLAC learns that we could send that soil to the testing lab at DES and get it processed for $500 and get results,
Yeah, it
I
seems
think
like.
we would do that. I don't,
Yeah, and I imagine that they could probably do it for free too, for the fact that,
We just don't know enough.
yeah, we don't know, we don't know.
especially since it used to be a project that they monitored this effluent, so stuff leaking into the river.
I think there are a lot of citizens who would be very concerned about this.
I think it would be, if PERLAC could figure out a way to get that testing done, or get somebody to
Tell us.
tell us how to get it done, like, that would be a good outcome.
You know, if they do find anything, that, you know, that it's, you know, there is a procedure for remediation.
And if they don't find anything, then we know.
And then if not, everybody can sleep at night.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you both. We good on that topic?
I think so. We know that Ann
Ann and
is
Scott,
ready.
the signature file review.
So I only have 3 items tonight for the board to sign. They're all intent to,
Cut?
nope, certification of yield taxes, timber cuts. So we have one for $1,232.47, several places to sign on each. The next one, $1,676.49. The last one, again, timber, $5,857.04.
It's still a good time to cut, I guess.
Yes.
Must be.
Zach, while you're signing that, I just got notification that the beautification committee will be taking care of that triangle tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Speaking of that,
Was that from Mark?
What's that?
Who from the beautification? Mark?
His wife was just on the way to a beautification committee meeting. He gave that to her. He got responded back to saying, "We're on it. We'll take care of it
Made
tomorrow."
that connection because he was
Yeah.
in the audience.
She said, I need to use the weed whacker.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
They're going to be planting
gas
some
in it.
lilies in that area.
There's I think there is a couple in that tangle, but
There are, actually, there's lilies, quite a few of them, I guess somewhere in there. Speaking of
at some point it
equisetum
probably
though,
need to be weeded.
the rotary with the equisetum, equisetum is like the weed that everyone says you gotta get
Yep.
rid of. It's like almost impossible to get rid of that without like herbicides, something like that. I know we can't use herbicides, but
Can you cover the entire thing with a black tarp
No.
for 6 months?
no, you could, but it'll come back next year. Because the tubers are very resilient and they'll tolerate that. And then when you take the black plastic off, and it'll start sprouting again.
Is there anything that
I think it's sure.
naturally
No, you keep on pulling
chokes
it.
it out?
Yeah, not weed.
Let's plant that.
So it's a tough one.
So just those 3, Ann?
Yeah, just those 3.
All right, let's do some committee reports. Mary Ann is absent because she could not get coverage at work. Planning board, Neil.
Oh, you want the planning board?
Do.
We had a work session on August 3rd, and we did a site visit on Page Street for the Bico storage project. And it rained really hard. But,
So you canceled?
we all got wet. Anyway, you know, everybody was amenable, and we're working on resolving. We're just waiting for the results from the engineering company for stormwater management, because there was a lot of discussion about the hydrology of the area and how some of the residents have flooding in their basements at times. And so it'll be taken up as soon as we have that report from the engineers. And the next meeting is, it may be on the agenda for the next meeting, I'm not sure, but that's this Thursday, the 16th of August. Then we went to Town Hall and continued our work session with Judy Barrett and her aides, Will and Alexis, and regarding the housing study. And it was a pretty comprehensive report, identifying needs, regulatory and zoning plan review and subdivision review, and targets and barriers. I don't know if anybody can understand what I'm saying, but you know, there's just so many aspects of this housing study. The unit density limitations, consideration of tax relief district incentives, maximum height for buildings, single-family dwellings with up to 6 units attached, minimum lot sizes in changes, and setback and frontage changes in zoning. And then we discussed the possibilities of changing the environmentally sensitive zone from what is a 500 feet fixed zone currently to a zone based on hydrology and soils, and you know, similar to what the state has. And so that's something the planning board will be discussing, possibly for zoning change. And we need to have statements of purpose for our zones, accessory dwelling units ordinance language, open space residential development, cluster development, and parking requirements. We're talking about maybe making the size of parking spots a little bit shorter, from 19 feet to 18 feet, and that might make a big difference. And then having different numbers of vehicles for parking facilities, 5 or more vehicles or less than 5, so that it might ease up pressure on residential and maybe houses that have less than 5 vehicles wouldn't be required to have as many regulations. And then more discussion on administrative process and approvals, and they want to discuss creation of property, eliminating split lots in zoning districts. Right now, we have some properties that are partially in one district and partially in another district. And Barrett's think that it needs to be more uniform measure. And let's see, I got another whole page of notes. The planning board has a deadline of August 7th. Wow, that was 4 days after our meeting, so I don't know what happened there, but they had to respond to the, I'm not sure, Scott, who they had to respond to.
They responded back to Barrett.
To Barrett?
To Barrett Consulting with regards to the feedback they received, not only from that joint meeting, but from the public meetings as well. And my understanding is that the op committee will meet again next Tuesday to have a final conversation about that before moving.
So that deadline was moved back a little?
That's right.
Yeah. So I don't know if I need to get into all this technical discussion.
I think the report, once they meet next Tuesday, the report will become available to the public
Yeah.
to talk about the different phases that you
Yeah.
spoke about there, mostly with regards to density, with regards to parking, with regards to height, all of the things that you
Yeah.
mentioned. That report will become available, I think, after next Tuesday's meeting.
Yeah, they talked about different levels of complexity in the zones, and then they wanted to tie in with community revitalization tax relief district. So, you know, those are all things to talk about. I
Gotcha.
tried.
Any other questions or comments for Neil? Planning board? Campus Community Council?
Had a conversation that Scott's on with Jess Dutile. I think we tentatively have picked out the 27th of September. That's a Wednesday evening. Kind of falls in with our traditional standard of doing that on a Wednesday evening. So hopefully more to come next time.
School district?
I sort of virtually attended the PES when they did a sneaky thing on me and they changed the time from 6 to 5 and I didn't know. So I watched that one after on the community channel, so to speak, actually on YouTube, so that I could kind of catch up and get some notes. Basically, they did a whole bunch of summaries. One of the things they called out is that they compared their numbers per grade, and we are significantly lower than it was 10 years ago, roughly 1/2 as many per grade as then. They also did report out that I believe that number is held steady at around 400 total students. Their first day of school is the 28th, and picture day is the 12th. They had basically a facilities update. They're fully staffed. They did their deep cleaning this summer. They accomplished a number of projects, which I'm not going to necessarily just read out because it's, but I'll kind of hit some highlights. They got their gym repainted, some lighting, tree pruning, flagpole. They had a freezer failure that they had to address during the summer, so that has been fixed. Let's see. We have an all sports open night on the 14th, which is today. They have 100, from last year they had 135 students participate. And on the 6th of September, they're going to be doing their sports physicals. And just prior to that, on the 30th, they're going to do their team photos. They're working on scheduling their safety drills with the fire department, I assume correspondingly with the police department. And their safety committee members are going to take some course material. They did have a number of discussion items. They're deferring their handbook approval till the next meeting. They did a year in review, and this is where they talked about their study at a 400. Free and reduced lunch rate is 33% of the students qualify. A major change is they're going to change their attendance policy. And that is basically, unless it's medically documented, it's an unexcused absence. I guess there's some issues with students taking a little too much time away. Some specific numbers, they had 121 students out of the roughly 400 have 10 or more days, well, between 10 and 20 days out during a given year. And then 58 students that had more than 20 absence in that year. So they're going to do this to try to drive attendance up by making them all unexcused. Means that they have additional options to start conversations.
What's the difference to the student, or what's the difference to the school between an excused and an unexcused absence?
I don't know that there is any difference per se, but it gives them
I'm just wondering, like,
greater options for discovering why they're out and having those conversations with the parents.
I was just to say, if the difference between an excused and an unexcused is literally those words you just said.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know as it's going to affect behavior at all.
This is their hope, that they can change behavior. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, well, I guess they'll have to,
Well, to require medical, kind of excuse, I mean, it just seems kind of, you have to drag your kid to the doctor to get an excuse, so.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, as a parent, I would happily take the unexcused absence to not go pay my $50 copay to get a note from my doctor to say my kid has a fever.
yeah.
Like, sorry,
Like I said,
$50 is not worth an unexcused.
I wasn't there to ask
Very
questions, so.
It seems like maybe they're missing the, like, what's the cause here? They are suffering from the same problems that, the rest of the region is suffering from. They're not able to hire enough people. Specifically, in this case, they were talking about substitutes. So there's got some challenges there. They did report out that the academic achievements, that we lost some ground during COVID, they have made up for. Oh, good.
Basically, they're at 55% in language and math, which is, it seems like a bad number, but apparently it's pretty good compared to the standards. So,
Being the 55th percentile, that would mean you were right in the middle, right?
yeah. Trying to see if there's anything else that's relevant. They learned a lot from that major event of last year. They learned that they had some communication missteps, and they're working to address those. They did talk about how every student has a Chromebook. One of the issues they have is with damage, and that there's probably not a heck of a lot they can do about it because, they're kids and they don't always handle things with delicate care like they're supposed to. They're going to get some protectors for them to hopefully mitigate some of those damage opportunities and make them a little more resilient. So they did talk about some of their goals. They want to reduce that attendance problem by 25%. They know that maybe they can't move it by that much, but if you don't have a goal,
Goals are good.
you can't really get people to move. They also did note that a lot of the absences are in kindergarten, which is not necessarily required. And The next meeting is September 11th due to Labor Day. It's normally on a Monday, but Labor Day is on a Monday, so, and they're gonna go back to the 6 PM, which, if you're not regularly checking the PES website to see if they moved the time, you're not gonna know.
Yes.
So that concludes BES. As far as PRHS, I don't believe they had a meeting on that first week of August. I couldn't find evidence of it on the website, and when I went there in person, I didn't see evidence of it, so.
Mr. Salter might know.
Tomorrow.
Oh, is it tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Oh, that's good to know.
What time?
Usually they're at 5
They're at
o'clock,
5. They're at 5.
which is maybe the most annoying time on the planet to have a meeting.
Or we meet then, here.
I know. It's an extraordinarily annoying time.
You know what's a more annoying
Work
time?
ends at 5. So to be able to, it's like,
7 o'clock is more annoying,
yeah, maybe.
because it's after you got home. Anyway, so glad to know that it's tomorrow. They might have updated the website after I looked. So that, I guess that corresponding to that, starting September, I definitely will need you to be the PRHS one, because it falls on a
On your
time.
class night? Yeah, okay. I will either be there or send my delegate.
Or you could watch the live stream.
It's also possible. My wife attends all of them, so,
Yes, she does. I see her these things.
Is she your delegate?
yeah. Exactly. Conservation.
The meeting is tomorrow at 7 right here.
Oh, look at you. Capital improvement, nothing till October. LRPC,
Nothing until fall-ish.
nothing till fallish. Parks and Rec.
Well, last meeting, I incorrectly stated that it was at that particular day. I mixed it up. It was actually today,
Oh, today.
while we're meeting right here. So they are meeting up at Cabby's house, having chicken and 7-Up or something like that. 7-Up chicken, that's it.
Wow. You're missing out.
Yep.
I don't know why no one signed, just signed Dan up to go stream that one. No parking, Energy Commission.
We met, Grace gave the update, and our next meeting is September 14th at 6 PM.
Advisory Budget Committee, also not until October? Why do I feel like they're meeting sooner?
That's right.
Also October? Okay. Economic Development, anything on that front, Bill? No, because just the Jessica do tile something soon. Negotiations, those are on hold for
Couple of years.
2 years. Chamber of Commerce, no Mary Ann. PERLAC.
We're going to look at soil samples. So, actually, tomorrow we've got VRAP, which is water testing.
Didn't you have water testing a couple weeks ago, too?
We certainly did.
How did that go?
Went great. Yeah.
Water's high.
It was water and it was tested.
High.
And in fact, usually we just do parameters with our own mechanical testing equipment. But 2 weeks ago and tomorrow we're going to do water samples themselves and send them down to the lab for further analysis. So
What are you looking for? What sorts of things are those tests looking for when you do them?
it's looking for phosphorus and chloride, and it looks for more. It's not really like E. coli or anything
Yeah,
like
that's why I
that.
wondered if it was E.
No.
coli or any
No.
bacterias.
No, it's just more organics and such.
Parts per million exceeding a certain threshold.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that also test for like the clarity of the water? How much like sediment?
We
is
do
in it,
that
kind of thing?
when we do it tomorrow. I mean, tomorrow we'll just do it with our equipment. That it'll test organics or just materials that are in. We'll also do oxygen and CO2 for that matter.
Because you don't have to send it off to the lab to do those.
No, that stuff we have meters
Interesting. We heard from Fire and Police Building Assessment Committee. Do we have we don't have another meeting scheduled as a follow-up
We
to
don't.
tonight?
Kevin's going to
Okay, Kevin will
come back and send a meeting
up with
date out.
So that brings us to public comments.
Public has no comment other than the good meeting.
We appreciate it, Frank. And
I'll make a motion then. I'll make a motion that we enter non-public in accordance to RSA 91-8:3, number 2, A, personnel, and C, reputation.
Second.
should we do roll call vote on this? What's wrong with my
Yeah.
brain? Neil, your vote?
Aye.
Zach, aye. Bill?
Aye.
Ted?
Aye.
And that is that.